And excellent. All right. So we're kicking into the post interview section. So again, thank you so much for joining. We talked about our involvement, where I am at Pax8 is really how we kind of had our first introduction, and we joked about the LinkedIn. We found
Yes, all
common
of our connections.
threads. Yeah. Old mentors of mine turned out to be
Yes,
really good friends of yours. And,
yes, so
so
funny, small world.
yeah, very much so. But, I think one of the first points I want to talk about was your stance on, not your stance, but I guess the MSP stance on protecting and how that should always be top of mind. And it is not something we need to
Hmm.
continue to ignore. And, it's that same old adage of like, I'm too small, no one's going to worry about me, or like, IT still a cost center. And we are still very much kind of fighting that. I find like even a lot of MSPs and partners will say like, I can't sell that, my client will never buy that. It's like, well, it's not a
Right,
matter of whether they'll buy it, it's like they have to buy it. Who are they going to buy it from? you
right.
you have to educate. And I think that's a very hard thing to do, even coming from an MSP myself. Like, okay, yeah, well,
Yes,
we got to beat this price. The industry has to stop looking at it that way. There's a barrier or a baseline of entry to now exist as a business, especially when IT is involved. And I think cutting corners is doing no one a service. It makes the MSP at risk.
yeah.
While the client might be taking the responsibility on, it's like, no, this is my risk. It isn't, because when the
Hmm.
client is compromised and goes out of business, who are they dragging down with them? It's going to be the MSP that didn't help them. No one's going to
Right.
remember the waiver they signed 2 years
Oh,
ago saying I didn't
exactly,
want the protection, right? They're going to just worry about like, what am I paying you for? So
exactly.
it becomes a very difficult, but to quote Matt Lee, which I find him doing this a lot, raise the tide, right? If every MSP has the same stance of like, we are not backing down on security services, this stops becoming a conversation. It just becomes
Right.
table stakes, right? So a lot of path to mow on that one and push forward. But I think you were dead on with that.
I couldn't agree more. I think you hit the nail on the head when there's a sort of perception that it's not an SMB problem.
Mm-hmm.
There's sort of this perception out there that it's like, oh, they're only going after the big enterprises. But,
Yeah.
and that was true for some time, but
Mm-hmm.
now they're sort of identifying that there's these other targets out there, unfortunately. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think you couldn't have said it better, where it's like, it's very much a problem that the SMBs need to be thinking about as well.
Yeah.
And like you said, the MSPs have to really be thinking about what services they're going to wrap around that.
Mm-hmm. I try to think of like where this needs to be stemming from, right? And like, well, MSPs should be the driving force. Like, this is not unique to just businesses, right? Like, I get constant text messages of like, hey, my withdrawal failed, or my Netflix didn't work, or
Oh
my,
my goodness, I
you know,
know. Yeah.
my wife, God bless her, she's really good about identifying that stuff. But every once in a while, she's like, is this legit? And she'll send me something, and I was like, that's a good one. It is not,
Right.
right?
I
Like,
know.
and it's it's
Yes.
it's so prolific, and I try to funnel all my family just asking questions about this stuff into me,
Oh
because
my
it
goodness.
it
I'm
catch
laughing because
yeah,
like this is me on a daily basis with my mom.
yeah. And like,
I recently got her an iPhone a little while ago, which is a new thing,
yeah,
and for her, and pretty much like my daily routine is in the morning, like my text from my mom, is this a real text? Is this a
yeah.
real email? So,
And I would much rather get that text message on the front end
same.
instead of on the back end. It's like, I've been trying to get this money transfer to go through and it's not working. It's
Right.
like, what do so it's,
Yes.
luckily we're pretty good, but I've got kids coming up in the world now, and they're learning about this stuff slowly. My kid's starting to engage in online activities with his friends, and I'm like, and
Yeah.
then I realized, like, I live so close to the industry that I forget, like, other parents don't know this.
Right.
So their kids
Exactly.
have unmitigated access, and they're asking, why can't my kid do this? It's like, because I
Right.
locked it down.
Yes.
I want to talk to their
Exactly.
parents. But it becomes
Better safe
this,
than sorry.
yeah, it really becomes an education thing. And I think, the younger generations, and this goes even to the AI conversation, the younger generation needs to be aware of this stuff. It can't, and we can't rely on the education platform to do it right now. We kind of have to be
Right.
spearheading that as adults. And that's a very difficult thing to do.
I couldn't agree more.
But the second thing, so when I asked that question about the AI stuff, I always like asking that one because, if you look at the general stuff on like LinkedIn, or where it's just chat GPTs and other
Yes.
variances of GPTs of like, optimize your business, make $1,000 a day on Instagram. It's taking our
Right.
jobs. And it's a lot of fluff. And like, I'm not going
Yeah.
to hide that like I use it for some of my like all my image generation, like I'm not an
Yes.
artist in any way, so it's fantastic
Yeah.
for that. But like, I can spot an AI image from a mile away now. I
Right.
think a lot of
Right.
people can.
Yes.
It's content generation. It's great, but it's never gonna replace like this.
No,
So
exactly.
when we start getting into, it's like, what's the best use case scenario? I like to see something that's not like, oh, like I have it summarize my emails and my Teams calls and things like
Right.
that. I like to see when it's, actual use cases. And what you described used to be an app years ago where other people had to volunteer their time.
Right.
Where they, I'm at the grocery store, is this milk? And they would hold it up
Yes.
and they had to pray that somebody on the other side was working for free and
Yes.
not lying to them because,
Right.
you didn't know what was going on. So this,
Yes.
this is an amazing enablement tool and kind of to me like one of those unique niches that are solved by this, and that's the creativity I love seeing in AI, of like, not having it generate content and do all this extra stuff, but actually have it fix and solve problems we didn't know we could solve for. So,
Exactly.
but that's amazing.
No,
I had
I
no idea that was actively in, and to hear about that, that was great.
Yeah, no, it's I think that's the piece of the AI story that I'm most excited about
Mm-hmm.
is some of the accessible use cases that it supports. Like I picked seeing AI, but there's so many others out there. Like
Yeah.
I'm sure I don't know if you've explored Copilot for GitHub yet, but just leveraging
Yeah.
some of that and coding through natural language. Some of those stories that are being surfaced through
Mm-hmm.
those accessible use cases to me are very inspiring.
I always laugh about that because it, like, to me, it's that like late night bar conversation. Like, you're in IT, I've got an amazing idea for an app, and now you can just tell someone, yeah, just go use Copilot for
Right, go
GitHub
do
and
it
tell it
yourself.
what you
Yeah,
want. Yeah,
exactly.
I'll see you on the Fortune
Yes.
500 or whatever. But
Yes.
yeah, like, that obviously opened up a lot of opportunity. I've tried, and I'll say fail realistically, to get into coding and development. Right.
Right.
When I started getting into the AI stuff, I was like, time to brush off my Python again and start getting into
Yes.
and doing it. And after my like 20th hour of YouTube video on like just building tables and arrays, I'm like, I'll wait for the GUI, and I just like stopped
Right.
doing it. Like, I'll go do Power
Yes.
Virtual Agent or
It
something.
makes
Like,
perfect sense. Exactly.
it is, you still need that expertise behind the keyboard, and like there's a lot of pseudo-code and logic that
Right.
you still have to bring to the table. But getting stuck in
Exactly.
variables, it's not a great place
Right.
to be. So, but
Agreed.
I'm really interested in seeing, and I do think it's going to be a major change. How it affects the MSP industry is always a very interesting thing, because I think you and I have had like conversations on this of like, how do we grow this, and
Yes.
Copilot's like really the key for that, for the productivity side. But it's
A
like, well,
hundred percent.
but like, how do
Where's
we?
the fit on the Azure side?
Yeah, and it's until someone creates that turnkey MSP capable, like, it solves a problem for the MSPs, right?
Right.
The argument can be made like a GPT, like their own chat
Yes.
or large language model, or a Power Virtual Agent. Like, yeah, that's like a really, I don't want to say, the word I'm looking for is like, it's not revolutionary. Like,
Right.
it's not really going to get much, and like then you have to convince them to stop using Chat GPT and train
Right.
their models and stuff. So, but whoever finds something like a marketplace application or something that solves or becomes a profitability engine for our MSPs, I think is really what's going to make that explode. So it'll be
I
interesting to
agree.
see what comes out in the next year or two in that realm. So
I totally agree.
fantastic. Yeah, that's really all. You and I can talk about other things, but probably
Yes.
shouldn't record it because they won't be relevant to anybody else listening.
Yes.
Is there anything else you kind of wanted to talk about, plug to the audience while I have you here? Or
No, I think like you kind of hit the nail on the head there, Matt, is like for me, it's really thinking about those use cases where AI can be used for good, such as supporting some of those accessibility use
yeah.
cases. I think that's the thing I'm most inspired about by this
Mm-hmm.
evolution. And so that's, for me, that's what I'm looking forward to most. One other, like, I know it was
Mm-hmm.
hard for me to pick, but I recently saw a startup where they had embedded cameras into glasses.
Mm-hmm.
And so the wearer of the glasses could see what was being spoken. Sorry, not cameras,
Yeah.
microphones. And it
Oh,
was
okay.
transcribing what was being spoken onto the lens. And so only the person wearing the glasses could see it, and so it was helping them understand what was being said in the room. And so just
Yeah.
some of those use cases that really support equity, I think I'm most
Nice.
inspired by.
Yeah. As a gadget nerd, the augmented reality stuff has always been like great as long as people don't know I'm wearing a massive headset like the
Yes.
Google lenses or whatever that came out, or
Yes.
even the
Yeah.
Apple Pro. It's like, oh, this is amazing, except you know you're wearing it.
Right.
Like if I could have this in here or have like some form of like discrete application that like enhances this stuff, that's super neat to me,
Yes.
but borderlines like cyberpunk kind of stuff. So,
Right.
so you'll get to give it a couple of years. Excellent. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time and for
Thanks,
volunteering to
Matt.
do this.
Of course.
I look forward to seeing you in person probably in the very near future. So
Yes. I hope so.
excellent.
Thanks, Matt.
All right. Thanks, everyone.